So hello everybody. Today we have with us Mr. Vinay Paharia, who is the CIO of Union Asset Management Company, a young and growing mutual fund. Vinay, welcome to our show. This is your fund manager speaking.
Thank you, Shweta, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to come to your show.
I'm going to just dive right in and ask you about, how are you navigating markets like this when there's sort of a mismatch between the GDP and, the markets, because one end we are seeing like so negative a GDP number, and the other end we are looking at markets which are positive and going up, and we keep hearing this that, markets are forward looking and hence they already discount and things like that. But how are you sort of navigating markets like this?
So, Shweta, it's actually quite fundamental in the way in which you value companies because markets are nothing but aggregate of companies. So it's very important to understand how does the market value companies. And as we all understand, markets are weighing machines. They weigh the worth of companies and then assign values accordingly. So what has happened is in the last 6 to 8 months, we have seen a significant destruction in GDP, which means earnings of 1 year of a lot of companies have substantially declined. But at the same point of time, the future potential of companies has remained more or less unchanged. So what happens is when companies get valued, they are valued for not just 1 year of earnings, they are valued for earnings to perpetuity. Equities are long duration assets. So for example, as you are aware, in bonds have durations which can range from as low as 1 month, they can go up to as high as 20-25 years, something like that. Equities similarly are extremely long duration assets, and hence 1 year change of coupon does not materially change the underlying fair value of companies. And this is precisely what we have highlighted in various forums and have also practiced it using our fair value approach while allocating assets in our balanced advantage funds or such other funds which use asset allocation. So according to us, there is a small damage to the overall fair value of the markets, which is what the markets are now clearly factoring in. And hence we do not feel that markets are irrational. And according to us, they are highly rational and reasonably efficient over a longer periods of time.
So you spoke about fair value approach, right? Could you just elaborate a little more on that for our viewers?
Sure. So to understand the value of any company or any equity of a company, it's easier to understand how a bond is valued. So a bond gives us, let's say, what is a bond? It's an asset which promises to give us principal back after a period of time and also promises to pay us coupons which are fixed over a period of time. So let's say you are buying a 5-year bond, it will give you, let's say, if it has a coupon of 10%, it will give you 10 rupees for every year. And at the end of the 5th year, it will give you a principal back, which is let's say 100 rupees. So the value of this bond can be easily valued by discounting back all of the coupons which you receive and the principal which you receive after a period of 5 years. Now, in valuing equity, there are two complications. One, you will never get your principal back because equities are assets to perpetuity. And second, the coupons which you are going to get, these are going to grow over a period of time. So an elementary formula of finance will tell you that the value of a perpetuity is coupon divided by the interest rates. So let's say your expected rate of return is, let's say 10%, and you're getting a coupon of 10 rupees every year, the value of this perpetual bond would be 100 rupees. If it is a growing perpetuity, which is what equities are, then there is a slight change in this formula, which means the 10 rupees of coupon gets divided by the cost of equity minus growth rate. Let's say growth rate is 5%, and if my cost of equity is 10%, then this 10 rupees gets valued at 10 rupees divided by 5%, which is 20 multiple, which is 200 rupees. This simple formula is very crucial in understanding what goes behind equity valuation. So we have discovered that markets are very smart. It is not at all irrational. And choosing this simplistic approach, there are of course a lot of changes in this approach, but the simplistic bond valuation will help you understand how equities get valued. Based on our research, we have identified 4 factors which influence the fair value of any company. These factors are: 1, returns on equity; 2, underlying growth in earnings; 3, prevailing interest rate over in the risk-free market. So what is the long-term bond yield? And 4th, and very important, the riskiness in the underlying asset. So for example, an FMCG company is far less riskier than a construction company or an airline company.
Right.
The market very smartly takes this into account. When we combine all of these 4 factors, they produce a multiple which is unique to each and every company. Like a fingerprint is unique for us individual, we can get a fair value multiple which is unique to each and every company. And what we have seen is that when we apply this multiple to core earnings or core book, we get our fair value for that company. And we produce a series of these fair values over the next 5 years and 10 years, and then see what is the potential return we are getting if we buy the company at the current market price. If the price goes down and the value doesn't change, my potential returns will rise, which is what happened in March 30th of this year. Markets crashed. The fair value did not fall by as much as the fall in market, and the potential return over a 5-year and 10-year period rose dramatically. Conversely, if markets rise substantially and the fair values don't, then your potential returns fall. So this is a very elementary approach which we have used in constructing portfolios, in choosing sectors, in asset allocation, and in also stock selection in our fund house universe. And it's the bedrock of our investment process.
Right. I'm glad you brought up process, because you are known for sort of setting up processes. And when you moved from Invesco to Union, I'm sure because Invesco had quite strong processes, I'd like to know how you sort of set up these processes at Union, and how is this, what are your filters? How is this working out for you? Because actually, I don't have to ask you how it's working out for you. We're seeing performance in the last few months, which has been fantastic in your scheme. So I'd really like to know more about the processes.
Sure, Shweta. So the way it works is, first and foremost, process is something which is repeatable. As you are aware, investing is mostly associated as an art. And if it is an art, purely an art, no 2 person can produce similar art.
Right.
What we have discovered is that investing is not only an art. It is a blend of art and science. And our understanding is that there is significantly large dose of science in investing than art. And by infusing process, we are trying to institutionalize this aspect of science in the process of investing. So what it does is that all of the elements of financial theory, which we have discussed while talking about the fair value approach, it helps us institutionalize a lot of learnings over the years, and helps create a system which is much more robust and is not dependent on a single person. So the idea is that the institution gets far more prominence. If an investor is investing in Union Mutual Fund, he gets the same experience irrespective of the fund manager. Right. The idea is that he should get a repeatable experience and a similar experience. And for that, the entire process has been set up with the core values which we just discussed. What is this process all about? So this process is brief. If I were to discuss in brief, it is divided into 2 parts: stock selection and portfolio construction. The overarching philosophy while creating, while investing in stocks is to follow the BMV approach, or the buying good quality business run by good managements at reasonable valuations. So the stock selection filters actually starts with a cutoff in terms of market cap. We look at companies which have a market cap of more than 500 crores. As we speak, there are about 1,000 companies listed on the exchanges which satisfy this criteria. And from these 1,000 companies, we then look at good businesses, which means companies which have a high returns on capital, which is higher than their cost of equity on a sustainable basis. And these companies should have some reasonable growth. So that would classify as being a good business, should be run by good management. And when we are talking about good management, we are not just talking about subjective evaluation. We have a whole checklist of factual factors which we want to look at while analyzing managements, like their past track record in terms of strategy, vision and execution, in terms of some of the other things like compensation, related party transactions, own share dealings, pledges, etc. So there are a whole host of checklists which the managements have to clear to pass the muster of a good management. And there is some subjective evaluation of managements like integrity, like being honest in terms of communication, etc. So once we have a good business run by good management, then we proceed to the third aspect, which is valuation. In terms of valuation, we always look at the fair value of the company, what it is today, and how this value is moving over the next 5 years and 10 years. Remember, equities are not dead businesses or not dead assets. Like, for example, if you buy a ton of gold, hypothetically, it doesn't generate anything. Here, equities are assets which produce something. So these are assets which grow over a period of time. So we need to look at what is the fair value as it is today and how it will move over the next 5 years and 10 years. And then look at the price we are paying today. And then we benchmark this against the entire universe of funds, of stocks which we have. If the stock in evaluation has a higher potential return, it comes in our universe and it will come in our portfolios, whichever portfolios it can get in based on the portfolio construction factors. So these are the basic stock evaluation filters. Once a stock comes in this universe, we then segment it into growth and bargain. So there are two segments, growth and bargain. So people normally talk of growth and value. We think all investing is value investing. No one deliberately pays a high price such that he will not make any return. So we classify growth companies and bargains. Growth companies are those which are growing their fair value at a fast pace, and bargains are companies where fair values are growing at a slower pace. In growth companies, the fair value, the potential returns are predominantly driven by fair value growth. There is no market re-rating which is expected. Even actually there is some de-rating which is built in. Whereas in case of bargains, we need two things. One is fair value growth and market re-rating. So this is how stocks are selected. That is the first leg of process. The second leg is portfolio construction. The idea of the second leg is to create portfolios which are true to mandate. And for that, we have 5 portfolio construction guidelines. Because of some of the things which SEBI has introduced, a lot of these portfolio construction guidelines are anyways being followed for us. And now they become anyway much more robust because of a lot of clear definitions which the market regulator has put in. So these portfolio construction guidelines act like a boundary for the fund managers. They are free to construct the funds within these boundaries, but cannot step out of these boundaries. Like, for example, in the multi-cap fund, we don't take any asset allocation call. So there is no cash call. The idea is to remain invested more than 95% at all points of time. Whereas the balanced advantage fund takes asset allocation as a key lever and uses it to generate alpha. So these, in summary, this is how the overall process works.
Yeah, but even in times of like these, right? So when there is a complete overhaul in, say, our habits, in the way we are living our lives, right? None of us thought 6 months ago that we'd all be working from home and technology will play
Absolutely.
such a huge role. So we see a huge change in habits of people. So having said that, a lot of businesses are then sort of reworking their business models. So what, according to you, which sectors are looking good now, and which are looking sort of attractive, considering that, now we are not completely different people, but completely different habits?
Yes, absolutely. There has been a lot of changes in habits. In economics, there is a technical word called changes in tastes and preferences. Right? When we were studying as kids, we used to talk about changes in tastes and preferences, which can shift the demand curve. Right? Normal demand and supply curves always slope downwards, but if you remember, there is something called as the shift in demand curve, which is because of one of these factors called as taste and preferences, which I would say, which is what we are experiencing now. There is a change in habits, which you rightly pointed out, and which has changed the demand curve, or the fair values of a lot of sectors and companies. According to us, the demand curve has shifted upwards for companies in the IT sector, companies in the healthcare sector. Uh, so these are the two sectors which we are seeing clearly getting positive or improvement in their fair values. And companies in the financial services, predominantly in banks and NBFCs, which have a high touch approach, they are seeing some negative impact. In addition, there is a negative impact on consumer discretionary sectors because of the destruction in incomes. But I would not call these aspects as much more permanent. These are transient factors. So I don't see or envisage a big shift in demand curve downwards for these sectors. But nevertheless, because of the near-term impact of the pandemic, there is an impact on fair values for these sectors. So from our fund house perspective, also we are overweight in sectors like IT, healthcare, and telecom, and we are underweight sectors like financial services and consumer discretionary sector because of some destruction in fair value, and the markets have not yet completely discounted that.
Right. So we've discussed about the sectors that are looking good, but you also manage multi-cap, right? The multi-cap fund, and you sort of look at large, mid, and small cap categories. So which of these are now looking attractive to you? Because there are investors who are now sort of looking at multi-cap funds, and now the structure itself will change. Existing investors will also sort of have to maybe increase their risk appetite a little bit more, because earlier multi-caps had more large cap than the mid and small cap. So what is mid and small cap something that we should see recovering in the next few months just because of this factor, or is it just looking attractive, or what is it looking like to you?
Yeah. So Shweta, we normally do not make any investment decisions because of any technical factors. uh, our investment philosophy itself starts with a statement that as investors we believe in fundamental analysis and fair values. So that is the key driver of the overall philosophy, and that's the key driver of our investment strategy as well. Coming back to your question about mid caps and small caps, I think one of the biggest mistakes which most of the people do is valuing companies and looking at them based on purely a P multiple or a price to book multiple approach. So when you do that, there are a lot of issues which can happen. Uh, so for example, companies in the small and mid cap space, as we've discovered, are young companies and growing fast. These are companies which have very high growth in fair values over a period of time. Such growing fair values normally would get a higher multiple. So if at the start of the show, we discussed a very small formula, which talked about, growth of a perpetuity, or value of a growing perpetuity to annuity to perpetuity.
Right.
So when you look at that, growth is a very important determinant of the multiple. And when we look at small and mid caps, these are having a high growth potential compared to the larger cap peers. Because of that, a lot of these companies deserve to trade at a higher multiple. So the way we look at any company, be it large, mid, or small, is to look at what is the potential return we will generate over the next 5 years or 10 years if we buy this company at the current prevailing market price. And we have about 180 companies, approximately 180 companies as of now in our fund house universe, out of which we have about 70 companies in the large cap segment and 110 companies in the small and mid cap segment. Based on our universe as it is currently, and based on the prevailing market prices, we are actually neutral across the entire cap curve. The potential return of large caps, mid caps, and small caps is more or less similar over the next 5 years to 10-year period. So if we look at aggregates, we do not see a big anomaly. But yes, there are pockets where markets are over enthusiastic on some companies, or they are actually pessimistic on some companies, which is where people like us make our money.
Right, right. Thanks so much, Vinay. This was such an insightful session. I must say, I have learned a lot, and I particularly enjoyed learning about the fair value approach. Of course, I've heard your other videos as well. I've seen your other videos and attended conferences where you've spoken about this. But it's always nice to be able to ask these questions to you directly. So thank you so much for doing this for us. It was an absolute pleasure having you here.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Shweta, and keep up the good work. Bye-bye.